This is the first time I think I've interviewed or even met both of you, so this is pretty exciting, and I'm happy to be able to ask a bunch of questions from what I saw this morning in the presentation. It was awesome. Like I think everyone's gonna be really happy. So, do you
Cool.
guys mind if I just start firing off?
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Okay, so Sarkareth starts following Farak, Iridicon, Verinoth in that 10.07 introduction, right? Is this like the Sarkareth like villain angle kind of happening right now in for 10.1? Is this like someone that we're gonna, because I'm assuming there's gonna be some sort of clash between those primal incarnates and the what is it, the Sundered Flame? I'm assuming that's probably what might happen. And does that mean that there's a chance that we see Sarkareth like as someone in Aberrus that we have to now fight because Sarkareth is kind of like, rebellious against the aspects?
Yeah, one of the things that we wanted to do in Dragonflight, throughout its whole narrative arc of the game updates, is that we wanted to have these multiple forces of antagonism. So it wasn't just one kind of villain that you're chasing that is the ultimate one that you're kind of getting closer and closer to. In this case, we have these multiple sets. So we have the incarnates that were released after defeating Razageth, the three that get away. They're very much in the mix here and setting events into motion, both in 10.07 and then in Embers of Neltharion as well. We got to meet Sarkareth along the way of the Drakthir starting experience, and at the end he breaks away because he feels betrayed, and so he's on the hunt for a legacy, and we'll be delving into that story first in 10.07 when we return to the Forbidden Reach, and then that does lead us into 10.1 with Embers of Neltharion, and yeah, we are pursuing Sarkareth, who is going down this darker and darker path, and he's gone from his origins fighting alongside the other Drakthir to now being someone who feels like he is owed power, he is owed a destiny, and he's going to try to claim that by any means necessary. And Emberthal, representing the other Drakthir, trying to get him to turn away from that path, but sadly, he's kind of locked in on this power, and that quest for power will take him into the Aberrus raid, where we'll be pursuing him, and he'll kind of take center stage for a big portion of that. But then we've got other things in the works too. As far as other villainy goes, we know that the Infinite Dragonflight has been messing around with the time ways since the beginning of Dragonflight, and that feeling that Nazdarmu has, the inevitable rise of Murazond. That's something he's going to have to face. And then there's other threats that are represented that will all be kind of, rising and falling through the course of our game updates, leading all the way to the conclusion of Dragonflight. So it's a story that ties all of these threads together, but gives us very different flavors of villains that we're facing at different times.
Awesome. I can't wait to see that unfold.
Yeah, and also, the Embers of Neltharion update should be on the PTR, hopefully this week. So very soon. And, at that point, kind of all this information, like you're going to have the dungeon journal, for instance, and you'll be able to kind of skim through Aberrus and see what's in there. But yes, absolutely. Sarkareth is in Aberrus, and you will be punching him.
Okay. That's great. And now we have the Zaralek Caverns, which was said to be a little bigger than Zareth Mortis. So is that zone just going to have all the same bells and whistles? Are we going to have like our world quests, our rares, our little secrets, our mount farming, just a regular quest line campaign that's tied into the story of 10.1? And there's a little side question: that was Deep Home like a pretty good inspiration for the Zaralek Caverns, because there's the different biomes how we had in Deep Home and Cataclysm and Zaralek Caverns as well?
That was certainly, one of the zones we looked at in terms of like both inspiration and things we want to do differently when it came to what Zaralek would be. And obviously, when we had introduced dragon riding and having it be such a core feature of the Dragonflight experience, we didn't want to have a place that felt too closed in. We wanted to make it very vast and give you a lot of places of verticality that you could use dragon riding and kind of soar around and swoop down and have twists and turns and all that sort of thing. So the zone was very much built with that in mind. But Deep Home was, it certainly has some thematic ties to this underground space, but Zaralek very much tells its own story as well. So, that was something we're excited about.
Yeah, and in terms of the content that you'll find down there, we actually talked a bit about just, hey, yeah, what does my like kind of end game loop look like down here? And something that we determined pretty early on was we want Zaralek Cavern to feel additive, supplemental. Like we don't want it to feel like it is replacing all of these, amazing zones of the Dragon Isles. And, in terms of how it integrates the core endgame loop, like not only do we want it to feel additive, and there's all, like you said, the bells and whistles of World Quest, there's cool new public events that happen down there that are kind of akin to like the super fishing public events. But there's actually like multiple entrances into Zaralek Cavern from the Dragon Isles. It's not just one in and out point into the underground. And it is we wanted it to feel like a very contiguous and kind of flowing space. So you'll actually just be able to dragon ride from out in the overworld of Dragon Isles into that kind of like deep tunnel straight into Zaralek Cavern and kind of continue on your gameplay there. So yeah, we definitely wanted to add a bunch of the like really fun content that people are excited about, we also wanted to look at kind of what else we could add to the Dragon Isles. So like Fyrak is a major character that you're going to be learning more about in Zaralek Cavern, and he kind of goes down there to become, empowered and essentially like juiced up. And he, once he completes that task, starts to assault. Like I think Steve might have mentioned these Fyrak assaults, where he actually assaults different spaces in the overworld of Dragon Isles. You've seen these kind of assaults endgame content in the past, like with Covenants and, in Battle for Azeroth, they were kind of the assaults and all the way back to Legion. So something similar to that, where there's this content that brings you above ground. And we're also planning to update a lot of the like public events that existed for Dragonflight launch for season 2 rewards. So those will stay relevant and part of your kind of core endgame loop as well.
Well, that's awesome
right?
to hear.
If you want them to be that.
No, that's great. That's one of the things I asked for in the beginning. I'm like, I hope that all these events, all these things that we're doing in Dragonflight in the first 2-3 weeks are things that we can, push forward to the next, raids, patches, so that we can still enjoy them while we're still enjoying the new content and keep everything relevant.
Yeah,
everybody
feedback
likes
heard
soup.
Loud and clear. What was that? Sorry, Steve.
Everybody likes soup. You don't want to give up.
We all love soup.
Chef.
Also, snail races. I mean, I don't want to go too deep, but I mean, I just wanted to say, yay, snail races. I heard that. I'm like, I can't wait, man. It's so exciting.
There's so much fun stuff down there. Like, one of the really cute elements of Zaralek Cavern are the Niffin, right? They're this new faction that you're going to meet.
Yeah.
And, they're kind of like mole people, essentially, right? And they have these big old noses. So there's a lot of fun content that was created around like sniffing, like we kind of joke around with like, oh, they're the Niffin, but they're kind of sniffing things out. So there's a lot of fun content down there to explore with that stuff as well.
Awesome. All right, so let's get a little bit into season 2. So excited, Freehold, Underrot, Neltharian's Lair, Vortex Pinnacle, with Vortex being the new, like a debut. But yeah, really excited. Those are awesome dungeons. I think those are really popular ones too that people really enjoyed running through in previous expansions. I'm happy Mogushan Palace did not make it. I was not a fan of that dungeon. I know it had to be up there, right, in the discussion. Ian was hinting at it for so long. I'm like, I don't want it to happen. I don't want it to happen.
Why not? What's wrong with Mogushan Palace?
Nobody likes Mogushan Palace. So the new season about to happen at 10.1. Are there any changes happening with the current like affix structure? I guess we could say the communities might be out there, maybe ready for some changes, maybe some removals, some additions, something fresh in that sense besides the seasonal affix that usually comes. So is there anything for that in season 2?
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack here. Yes, absolutely. We're actually, we've been listening to feedback, hearing a lot of what the community is discussing, and we're ultimately feel like a lot of this feedback boils down to just especially early on, some of the season 1 Dragonflight dungeons, just there's a lot of complexity. There's just a lot of stuff going on. Like when you get, trash packs that each individual creature, if they get a cast off, it could kill you. There's thundering going on, and there's all these affixes that are also making, the core combat of these trash creatures more challenging. So we actually in season 2 are looking to kind of tackle that feedback in multiple ways. One, we're actually just removing the seasonal affix. Like there just will not be a affix at level 10. When we were talking about this, originally in Battle for Azeroth, when we created seasonal affixes, the goal there was, okay, well, you have these dungeons that you're going to be running season over season. So how do we change up, the way that you route through the dungeon? How do we change up the way that you approach the dungeon? And, let's come up with this idea of a seasonal affix that'll change the way you approach it. With the idea of Dragonflight, where each season has an entirely, new pool of dungeons, like we kind of felt like that problem didn't exist anymore.
Right.
So we were kind of experimenting with Thundering and like, okay, well, what's other design space we can explore here? And ultimately just kind of want to try and experiment in season 2. We're just like, you know what? This is obviously a lot of stuff. It's a lot of balls to juggle. It can really play, doesn't always play nicely with all of the encounters. And let's just try a season without a seasonal affix and see how that goes. So that's one big part.
Oh, wow.
A second is we're really taking a close eye at the level 7 affixes. And I would go so far as to say it's like a major refresh of that bucket, and looking to take an eye towards specifically creating counterplay and opportunities for you to use your utility to really play around those affixes rather than them always being in some cases unavoidable damage. So we really want to take a hard look at those level 7 affixes. And then additionally, just on the pure dungeon side, we're taking a look at the season 2 Dragonflight dungeons, right? Like, trust me, we have seen and heard the feedback about people being concerned about Brackenhide when it shows up.
Yeah.
When it shows up in the Mythic Plus pool.
Yeah.
We're really taking a close eye at that, and frankly making some cuts to the core mechanics of the dungeon. And maybe some of the trash pulls or some of the spells that they're casting are going to get some adjustments going into season 2. And looking at just the baseline complexity of what these dungeons are, then you add affixes, then you add the seasonal, it just becomes a lot. So we're really taking a close look at that for season 2.
Well, that's amazing to hear, and thank you for listening to the community, because we've been speaking and you're paying attention, and we love to see that. Yeah, I mean, I think about Oldemon, the Legacy of Tyr dungeon, then I think about Quaking, and then I just don't want to log it. It's like, any dungeon that we have with like very narrow hallways and Quaking and Sanguine are just like a nightmare. And I was actually happy that it didn't end up being in the first season, because with Thundering in those narrow hallways with all those trash packs, it would have been pretty gnarly. But it's so that was the next question. It was, can I get a hint at the seasonal affix? So I guess the answer is no seasonal. Nothing. So I believe you said the PTR this week will be hitting 10.1.
That's the goal. Yeah, we really would like to get this stuff into our community's hands as soon as possible. So yeah, the goal is this week.
So with during alpha and the beta, we only had like that scheduled weekend testing of Mythic Plus, and a lot of us that were testing really wanted to just like dig into like the dungeons on a daily basis, just so we can find all the bugs, all the kinks, and report what we can. Is that going to be the same with this PTR, or are we going to be able to have access to the Mythic Plus dungeons throughout the entirety of the week as the PTR is up and Mythic dungeons are available?
Yeah, I'd have to check with the team on what the exact plans are, but we've definitely, felt like how we test those Mythic Plus, how we do Mythic Plus testing is something we need to take an eye at, right? Like, I jump on the PTR too and try to get into groups, and most groups aren't even running with any affixes, right? And it's like, well, that's not really indicative of what this will feel like on live. And so the feedback that we're getting there isn't always aligned with what it'll feel like once we get on to the live game. So that's definitely an area that we've talked about. Like, how are we testing Mythic Plus, and is there stuff we need to change there? So I don't know exactly if there's things that are changing, but I will definitely follow up with the team to find out.
And I see I have a question for you for Aberrus. Now, that is Neltharian's lab, yeah? And that is where he went mad, and he got corrupted by the whispers of the old god. Is that in 10.1 is, I don't know if you can say or not, is that present still there? Is it still there lingering? I mean, we just came back to it. It's just been there. No one's really known what's happened in the 10,000 years since the fall and everything. So is it still there?
Yeah, that's very much a storyline that we are exploring. Okay. Again, without going into
not too much
spoilers. What Aberrus allows us to do is show that kind of journey from Neltharion. When he first started the facility, he was still the Earth Warder. He was still the protector and defender of the Dragonflights and all of that. But we saw him first give in to the Whispers in the fight against Razageth in the Legacies 2.5B animatic. And now we get to see some more of that storyline of him kind of gradually descending, giving in more and more, communing with the whispers, with the power of the old gods, all of the stuff that led him to become Deathwing. So we get to unpack that through a bunch of different encounters that play out in here, and to see that sort of legacy in physical form, all around you in this space, is a really cool opportunity, for the first time really delving into that journey of gradually falling from grace. So that's a really cool storyline we get to see play out in the eyes of these characters that we care about, like this guy behind me here, and his perspective on the Black Dragonflight's legacy, and Sibelian's perspective, and Abyssian's perspective, and Emberthal's perspective. All of that stuff, those are key characters to this storyline, and we see it all kind of culminate and come to a head inside Aberrus, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and there's like like I mentioned, once the PTR is out there, people will get into the dungeon journal and get to dig around at this. But there's just such a tremendous opportunity, and the team really kind of geeked out over this, where there's just so many cool thematic hooks and the story of the legacy of Neltharion. Like just one of the ideas that the team kind of latched onto early on that you'll get to see and experience, and is one of the encounters in the raid, is like this idea of like, where did Shadowflame come from? Like,
Right.
How did he create this? What would the experiments have looked like that led to this outcome? And being able to actually have a raid encounter where that is, what you get to experience and kind of see and play in gameplay, what that might have looked like. So there's a lot of really, really awesome encounters that very much have those thematic tie-ins that you're talking about, not just with potentially the whispers of the old gods, but also like, what did Neltharion do in this place that was really, frankly, like the blueprint for things like Blackwing Lair and Blackwing Descent, right? Like this came first. This is the thing that informed those other things, and what kind of crazy experiments would have happened here.
Cool, awesome. So are cross faction guilds coming in 10.1? Because that was part of the presentation, and I was pretty excited because our CE guild, after we killed Razageth on Mythic last month, a couple of people.
Congrats.
Thank you. We have like a side guild now that's like Alliance, and we have a Horde, and now in our current raids, we're inviting them on their Alliance characters, and it's really fun. So is that something that we're going to see in 10.1, or are we able to finally just make a guild?
Yep.
Just everyone could just be Horde and Alliance within our server and just rock out?
Yep, that's the plan. I mean, starting with the first, I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure the very first version of the PTR that you'll get will have that feature enabled, so you'll be able to make cross-faction guilds.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Embers of Neltharion, because I'm right there with you. I had, we enabled the ability to play cross-faction, right, for a lot of reasons, but I myself have been raiding and doing Mythic Plus with people in different factions, and just that question of like, I wish I could be in the same guild as this person. I wish I could G-invite this person. And we're trying to be really intentional with the cross-faction features and how we roll them out, and felt like it was, especially with the success of cross-faction grouping, the next step was cross-faction guilds for sure.
Awesome. So here's a couple of quick ones. I always have to ask for every interview of this expansion. By any chance, are Evokers getting a tank spec?
I mean, we've never added a spec, so I can't really speak to that. But
okay,
when we were talking about Evokers, we wanted to add a range DPS spec, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the goal, and they've got the big old wings, so there was lots of discussions about what would that look like in melee range and stuff like that. So
it didn't work out too well.
Tanks were discussed in the early days when Evokers were a glimmer in our eyes, but sorry.
And is Paladin Leap a thing? People need to know for 10.1. Everyone sees a little data mining like Paladin Leap is coming. That's the big announcement. I know it. I'm like, I don't know.
So the Paladin revamp was actually, I believe, in 10.07 or 10.07 content update, which is coming out March 21st. And Paladins, got a pretty major revamp there.
Oh yeah.
I hope you're excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited because Pro Paladins benefited from the Rep Paladins getting their changes. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, Paladin mobility is definitely a hot topic, something that gets discussed a lot. And within our own team, we talk a lot about like kind of leaning into strengths and not, when we have clear strengths and weaknesses of classes, it's important to hold on to those. And just a lot of conversations around like mobility and being a Rep Paladin. You've got freedom, you've got all these tools. What are the strengths that are counterbalancing these weaknesses? So I believe that the direction the team went was to look at more what their ranged options are, look at what their current existing tools like Divine Steed are there ways that we can prop that up versus basically giving them a warrior ability. So, you know, definitely took a close look at Paladin mobility as a weakness and, you know, tried to make sure that their strengths and weaknesses were in line with what our expectations would be.
Awesome. So with every new season, I'm assuming there's going to be new currency and upgradable armor, crafting, all the stuff. Do you have like maybe like a TLDR of like what's going to go down for season 2 for upgrading? Like what our new currency will be, if you could discuss any of that and how it's all going to happen?
Yeah, I'd love to. So you know, with the launch of Dragonflight, one of the major features was our professions revamp. So we're definitely planning to, you know, continue that forward, bring the same philosophy, kind of the same general, you know, item level mapping against, you know, like how high level the crafted gear can get forward into the Embers of Neltharion. And in terms of like upgrading, there's actually a pretty significant change here where, you know, for Dragonflight, there are quite a few upgrade systems, right? We have Valor, we have Storm's gear, we have all these different types of gear that can be upgraded. And ultimately, it's the same goal of wanting you to have gear that you can upgrade and make progress on and feel like you're, you know, progressing your character in small little bites. But they all had different ways to do it. So it felt like just a lot of complexity and confusion that was being caused there. So with our Embers of Neltharion update, we're actually taking a huge I would say like item upgrade revamp and trying to kind of unify the item upgrade systems to be a lot more clear, to create more clear rewards from certain activities. So there will be, you know, your flight stones, which is a new currency that will come from lots of different activities, from the outdoor world to Mythic Plus to raids. And that's kind of the currency that you'll be getting a lot more of versus we have crests, which are the currency that is more of the like high water mark that kind of indicates like, you know, how you know, are you doing heroic raids or normal raids or LFR? And that will kind of determine the crest level that you get, which will allow you to kind of like upgrade your gear to an even higher item level based on what crest you've been able to obtain. So that's something that we're introducing with Embers of Neltharion and are actually hoping to get it to the PTR pretty early so that people will be able to give us feedback on that system. So
yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of math that needs to go down for
exactly
for all of the degenerates out there.
Exactly, getting the tuning right is really important there. You know, doing things, you know, iterating on the UI to make sure that's clear. All that stuff is really important to get in the player's hands so that we can have time to iterate.
Awesome. So now that we're heading toward 10.07 and 10.1, like, are we expecting like kind of like the Shadowlands kind of like content release schedule? Like how many raids are we looking at, do you think, totally for the expansion? Do you obviously there's going to be more after 10.1, but is there any like definitive number you guys are set on for Dragonflight, or is it just
we have not announced, you know, like the final raid or how many of the raids here. So like right now our focus is definitely on Embers of Neltharion, but we've also, you know, we've been talking a lot about this new kind of content philosophy that we've been rolling out and experimenting with, right? Like even just on March 21st with our 10.07 update, like we haven't really done a patch like that before. No, that's not a patch number that you might have seen in the past. So, you know, what is the goal of these patches? What do we want to explore within that? With these 0.07s, like Danuser has mentioned a couple times, like they're really great for foreshadowing the current content, right? Like that's really where we get to start to dip our toes into what's going on with the Black Dragonflight, what's going on with Neltharion's legacy, and you know, how does this new patch philosophy, you know, what kind of opportunities does that enable for us? Is definitely something that you know, we've talked about.
Yeah, as a storyteller, I love the opportunity to have more hits where we can build that story, and we've been very thoughtful about like using these like 10.07 as a prelude to what we will see in 10.1. So being able to connect the dots in a very satisfying way, that's definitely one of our goals with the patch cadence we have for Dragonflight.
But yeah, Embers of Neltharion is not the end of the story. There's definitely more to come, just no specifics on how much or when or what.
Awesome. And then the new Aberrus raid, are we going to see like more like the rare rings and cool like evoker class theme weapons? The bow are we coming back with that? If so, are there any hints as to which classes are going to get lucky? Who wins the lottery in 10.1?
Yeah, we were ultimately we were pretty happy with, you know, kind of the two experiments that we had with Vault of Incarnates. One was, like you mentioned, those kind of more rare items, right? Like the bow, some of the trinkets, some of the rings. We felt like those gave people kind of those chase items to be excited about when you see them drop, because they're a little bit more rare, and just the opportunity to say, hey, this is more rare, opened up some doors for us to do more with that. Other than, I think in the past we'd had done that on kind of the end bosses, but that was about it. And expanding that is something that we thought was super successful and we loved. So that will definitely be returning in Aberrus, as well as kind of that more granular kind of tiered item levels, even within a single difficulty, right? Like kind of recognizing that, as you get deeper in the raid, it gets a lot harder, right? Like the wing boss is harder than the first boss. So let's make sure that the item level on those rewards is higher. And then, going into the end, the penultimate, the end boss as well. So those are definitely things that we felt were successful and are coming with us.
Awesome. And then I have a final question. I think we have a few minutes left, right? I think
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So there's a lot of UI changes happening too with 10.1. And one thing I've always thought about is there's like the raid layout UI. Is there any plans to improve the raid layout UI for like quality of life? Because, Razageth is a perfect example of a raid where, I have like 1,000 weak auras in the middle of my screen connecting to ERT, connecting to another add-on, and it's a lot. And obviously years of playing, you get used to it. But is there any like room in that UI editing system for like a raid layout in the future for players just to kind of experience like a better maybe like call out system? Because I could definitely tell my experience from being with my guild and with being on my stream in the morning and being in pugs and pugging LFR, Razageth, or LFR, or Diurna, or whatnot. Does that editing tool have any room to improve that aspect of the game for like giving players more like visual like alerts and stuff like that?
I think so. There's a couple layers here. When we think of the base UI, we always try to consider like how do we serve the broadest audience, and we do feel like for players like yourself, we want to make sure that you have tools with things like the add-ons to customize it as much as you want. But so we never feel like we're going to be necessarily competing with some of the very advanced stuff that you might be managing, but we definitely do agree that there is room for improvement on a lot of these elements, and we're definitely going to be continuing that the kind of UI revamp that we started, kind of kicked off Dragonflight with. And as we mentioned, that's a journey, right? Like that's going to be rolled out over time, and the Embers of Neltharion is definitely an opportunity for us to kind of do part 2 of that. I think the group has been focusing on actually, I'm not sure this is exactly what you meant, but things like the group manager, your raid frames, your quest tracker. Edit mode is something that we've seen a ton of feedback on and people really love, but want even more kind of customization. So edit mode is getting a lot of adjustments as well. So yeah, that's definitely something that we'll have kind of part 2 of our HUD revamp in Embers of Neltharion.
All right, and my last question and a half is I saw normal, heroic, and mythic coming out on the same day again. I'll be honest, I thought that when the first time it happened, it was more of like a holiday kind of thing where we just needed to like get that time. You need to get all those raids in before let everyone get home with the family and the holidays. But now it looks like we're doing it again. Is that just the norm now? Are you guys really just happy with that system?
We are doing it again for sure. I'm not sure that I would say it's the norm moving forward, but certainly that's what we're doing for Embers of Neltharion and Aberrus. Really when we, like you mentioned, when we announced that was kind of a forcing function based on, when things were kind of being rolled out. But ultimately when we discussed it after the fact, our season rollout and raid rollout always felt like there was some kind of quirks and a bit of confusion for the broader player base, right? Like, hey, that week where you have to ask, like, wait, what level Mythic Plus do I need to do? Like that for the broader audience didn't really feel like it was servicing that group as well as we could. And we feel like this simultaneous release really just makes it such a clear, indication of, hey, season 2's go, you can do what you want to do. And that felt like, a really awesome moment and thing for our players. And the problems that having that simultaneous release that we discussed and kind of were identified, we feel like those are problems that we can solve, and we can take some of the lessons learned to look at what those problems were and how do we improve and grow moving forward. But we really felt like for the widest audience possible, that this simultaneous release was really really helpful.
Awesome. And then finally, now that we're done with the 10-0 as we call it, Steve and Morgan, Team Sibelian or Team Rathian? Go.
I'm a Rathian.
Okay.
Team Rathian for sure. I'm not sure if Steve's allowed to say. You might get
Yeah,
tweets.
I'm kind of maintain my impartiality there. I will say that while Rathian gets a lot of popular vote, I think Sibelian made a pretty good case for himself in the course of 10-0. So there's a lot to like in both of them.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me. This has been a very incredible interview, and I'm really happy for 10.1 and 10.07 coming in a few days. Is there a date for 10.1 yet? Is there like a time frame?
No date yet. But like we mentioned, the PTR is soon, so you can kind of
get in there.
Smart. They can kind of work their way backwards based on
Well, thank you for taking my questions. You guys have been amazing. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.